Yo, what is up, guys? It's Cohen back here again today with another video. We need to have a talk, and we need to have a talk about ring culture specifically. If you don't know what ring culture is, it's basically the concept that in the NBA and in basketball in general, nothing else really matters other than rings, or that rings are the only thing that matters in someone's legacy. If someone doesn't have a ring, their legacy is greatly diminished. And to some people, if you don't have a ring, your legacy means absolutely nothing to them. If you haven't won a championship, you don't matter in the grand scheme of basketball, and that is toxic, and it doesn't make sense. And I'm going to explain why it doesn't make sense, how toxic it is, and how it is all inevitably a cycle. When you complain about people not winning rings, it leads to a lot of other things that you might not like in the NBA, and you don't even realize it. So that's what I'm going to go into this video. I'm going to talk about ring culture, the pushing of it by media, specifically some of the talking heads on media. There was one situation in general today that kind of bothered me, and really is what finally catalyzed me to make this video. It's one that I've been meaning to make for a while, but that was the moment that really spurred me to make this. So I'm just going to get into it. It's a lot. And we're going to start with the cycle. So this cycle is about 4 steps, or about 5 steps. So first step is that media and fans say that a player's legacy is lessened by the fact that they don't have rings. You've seen this before. You see it on Twitter all the time. If you're on NBA Twitter, at 3_Cone on Twitter, go check me out if you haven't checked me out yet. But if you've been on Twitter, if you've watched these like daily sports shows, they talk about this all the time. Rings, championships, that's all that is talked about on those daily sports shows. And a lot of times on NBA Twitter, it's, oh, that player hasn't won a ring, so they're lesser, whatever. It's a player has a great moment and they go, oh, it doesn't matter because he hasn't won a championship, whatever. People talk about it all the time. You've seen it before. I don't need to explain to you what is happening there. So the second step of it is that when media and fans say that a player's legacy is lessened by the fact that they don't have rings, it leads players to join championship favorite teams or team up with other star players in order to pursue a ring and fix this perceived gap in their legacy. Now, I know a lot of players say that they don't listen to the fans, they don't listen to the media, but there are some players, I think probably a majority of them, see these comments. They hear this criticism, and no one likes to be criticized. I hate being criticized, and I'm a YouTuber with like 3.6 thousand subscribers. I'm not this big NBA player personality that's on TV every single night, that has millions of fans, that has a franchise that I'm trying to carry. I don't have that burden on me. And even I hate being criticized. I see a negative comment and it really messes with me for a little bit. And I've got to learn how to get better with that. But for NBA players, this is a massive like fan base that can criticize them. The media can criticize whoever they want because they're not going to get criticized back, or it's their job to criticize these players. So they're going to go out and say whatever they want to say. They really don't care. And it's not fair to a lot of the players how much criticism they get for these things. So those players that do see that criticism, and additionally, when you grow up as a basketball player, you become hyper competitive. These NBA players are super competitive people, and you don't get to the NBA unless you are hyper competitive like they are. You have to work hard, you have to want to be the best, and a lot of these NBA players perceive themselves to be the best at their craft, or one of the best at their craft. And so, winning a championship is that validation. A lot of players want that validation, which is absolutely understandable. If I was in the NBA, I would really want to win a championship because that's awesome. Does it require a lot of luck too? Yeah, it does. No NBA team wins a championship without some degree of luck, but it also requires a lot of skill. And so it feels very validating when your skills help to contribute to that championship. It makes sense. The problem is then when those players join those teams or they team up with other star players, they are immediately criticized for creating a super team, or they are called a ring chaser. And they're slandered on social media, these daily sports TV shows, because they can't win on their own, is a term that you hear a lot in ring culture in these discussions, which is dumb. It's a fallacy. It doesn't make any sense because no NBA player has ever won a championship by themselves. It's a team sport. There's 5 players on the court at all times. There are 10 players usually in a rotation, sometimes 9, sometimes 8, depending on the team. But you have all these different players that contribute. It's never an individual sport. You cannot win a championship in the NBA without a great team. It's not possible. That's just how it works. You can have teams make incredible runs to the championship with just one star, but winning it all is often impossible. For example, the 2018 Cleveland Cavaliers. That was not a great team, but LeBron James, one of, if not the greatest player of all time, led that team through the playoffs, through the Eastern Conference, past the Celtics in 7 games, and got to the finals to face a team that was just way better. They were just a really good team in the Golden State Warriors with Kevin Durant. They were unbeatable pretty much that season, and we saw it because it took a absolutely heroic, one of the best finals performances we've ever seen from LeBron James, just to try and win game 1, and they didn't even win it. He put up one of his best performances of all time, one of the best playoff performances we've ever seen in the history of NBA basketball in that game 1 against the Warriors. And they lost because it just wasn't enough, because he didn't have a great team. And so he goes on to lose that finals. They get destroyed, end up getting swept, and it hurts his legacy because people don't talk about the fact that he brought the Cavaliers to that spot, the spot that, quite honestly, that Cavaliers team should not have been there. The 2018 Cleveland Cavaliers were not good enough, or perceived by many to not be good enough, to get to the finals. It was just LeBron James with a heroic effort. He did some incredible things, beating up on the Raptors, multiple buzzer beaters to win the game. It was just a man on a mission. But a man on a mission doesn't win you a championship. A great team wins you a championship. You can have these great runs. Dirk with the Mavericks. It was an incredible story of one player stepping up, but he had great pieces around him as well. You cannot win a championship without a great team. So saying that a player has never won, or that a player can't win on their own, is dumb, and it doesn't make any sense. So then when people say that a player can't win on their own, some players then decide, okay, I'm not going to ring chase because I see these other guys being criticized for chasing rings, for going to the super teams. So I'm going to stay with my team and I'm going to try and grind it out here. We're going to go for a ring in my hometown. And that's noble. I love to see that. That's cool when players decide to stay with their franchises. You talk about like a Stephen Curry, who given has won rings, but he's decided to stick in Golden State for as long as he has. And a great example of this is Russell Westbrook, a player who stuck it out in OKC after Kevin Durant left for Golden State. Westbrook said, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to sign an extension. We're going to try and get it done here because I love this team. I love the culture. I love the city. I love the fans. I want to stay here and try and win a championship. It didn't work out. It just didn't. And when he didn't win in that situation, we return to the beginning of the cycle where they're heavily criticized for not winning a ring, and it all just keeps going. That is a cycle, and it's a toxic one because it leads to NBA fans don't like super teams, right? Well, saying that players need to win rings leads to super teams. And these media talking heads saying that, oh, so-and-so doesn't have a ring, their legacy doesn't matter, leads to them joining a super team. Kevin Durant got a ton of criticism for not having a ring before he left for Golden State. And then when he joins Golden State, people talk about, oh, these rings don't count or whatever. No, the rings count. I'm a Thunder fan. I should despise Kevin Durant for the Warriors move, right? But the Golden State Warriors rings count. Every championship counts. There's no way you can say that a championship doesn't count. And that's another thing people do. They'll say that when a player finally gets over that hump and wins a ring, it does not count because they were on a super team or they had all this help. Then what did you expect them to do? When you told a player they weren't good enough to win on their own, they join another team because you need multiple stars in the NBA to win a ring nowadays. They join up with another star, they win a championship, and people say, oh, they didn't earn that ring or whatever. It's so dumb. It doesn't make any sense. And I know I'm giving them the attention that they want because ultimately the goal is to get views and attention with takes like this. But it's annoying because some people genuinely have these views. The comment that really spurred me to make this video today was one that Stephen A. Smith said about Russell Westbrook, my favorite player of all time, earlier today, claiming that he won't be that celebrated, or he, in his opinion, he shouldn't be that celebrated because he couldn't win a ring with Kevin Durant, or when Kevin Durant left, completely ignoring any context, that there were several key injuries in those Oklahoma City Thunder runs during the Durant and Westbrook era. Westbrook getting hurt by Patrick Beverley during the earlier days of that era. He said that he couldn't win a ring with or without Kevin Durant, and therefore his legacy doesn't matter that much. And once again, I know this is for views and attention, which is exactly what I'm giving them with this video, but people watch these shows for real. I might think that these shows are boring in that they talk about the same topics over and over again, and I don't really care about them that much. I never watch these shows, but some people watch and listen to them like they're gospel, and that ends up leading to them having these takes online. And there are people who, trust me, I have been in NBA Twitter since 2019. It's been a long 2 years being in NBA Twitter, and I've seen some awful takes, some takes that just don't make sense to me. And this is an opinion held by a lot of people. I tweeted this out earlier, quote tweeting it, saying that this is dumb. And I'll talk about the rest of what I said in the tweet earlier. And people commented under my thing and said, no, it's not. This makes sense. Win a ring or else your legacy doesn't matter that much. It's so dumb. It doesn't make any sense. So something I said in the tweet is that, so if Russell Westbrook's legacy doesn't matter that much because he hasn't won a ring, what about players like Allen Iverson, Steve Nash, Charles Barkley, Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, James Harden? Should these players have their legacies ignored because they've never won a ring? Or at least not yet in the case of Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, and James Harden. Should those players just be ignored? No, they shouldn't. It doesn't make any sense. Why would they be ignored? Because they're incredible players who have had these incredible moments. A championship, while being the ultimate goal for NBA players, only 11% of all NBA players ever win a title. That's a stat I looked up earlier, but it was in 2020, so I'm not sure if it changed from 2020 to right now, but I'm pretty sure it's just about around the same percentage. Around 11% of all NBA players ever win a title. That's so small. So should we just ignore the legacies and accomplishments of the other 89% of players? And obviously the answer is no, because that's dumb and it would be super counterproductive to basketball conversations and it would take away from so many storied legacies. Should we not talk about Damian Lillard's incredible game winners against the Thunder and against the Rockets in the playoffs because he hasn't won a ring yet? Should we talk about how Chris Paul is having this incredible season, but should we ignore that because he hasn't won a ring yet? No, none of that makes sense. He's had these incredible moments. So what's the solution? I don't think there is one. I really don't think there is, because pushing ring culture or stopping the pushing of ring culture is an obvious solution to this. But it gets these shows way too much publicity and viewership, so it'll never stop. And it's a belief that a lot of people have. There will never be a consensus on issues like this because basketball is a sport with such a global and widespread fan base that it's impossible for everyone to settle on criteria for what makes or breaks a player's legacy. We will never have set criteria. That's also why I'm not a huge fan of all-time lists, and I don't know if I'll ever make one on this channel because I think it's just a lot of subjectivity. I can give you my opinions and people are just going to crucify me because I don't quite see a player the way they see it. So, getting to me personally, I'm of the belief that championships really aren't everything. That obviously, it's the end goal. At the end of every season, we crown an NBA champion for a reason. That is the goal of every team going into a season. But the truth is that there are so many other incredible accomplishments outside of a championship that for the majority that don't win one, the majority of players that just don't win a championship, they can still have an incredible legacy. We go back to Russell Westbrook, who said a few days ago that he believes he has made a legacy to be proud of himself. He's going to break the triple-double record probably this season. He's about 7 triple-doubles away with around 10 games, and he's getting one pretty much every single night. He's about to average a triple-double for the 4th straight season, something that hadn't been done for 50 years when he did it the first time in his MVP season, and he's about to do it 4 times in a row. He's going to pass Oscar Robertson for the most all-time this season, which is an incredible feat that should be celebrated, but not ignored because he doesn't have a ring. Why would that make sense? The two things don't correlate. Allen Iverson was an icon of the early 2000s NBA and inspired a ton of people to fall in love with the game of basketball. Some of the greatest handles of all time. Led a team like we talked about LeBron James in 2018. Led a team to the finals that maybe had no business being there. And should all of that be ignored because he never got a ring? No. People love Allen Iverson. People talk about Allen Iverson a lot, and he deserves it because he was an incredible player and he deserves that love. Chris Paul, a guy I was just talking about, a 6-foot point guard that has been dominant for well over a decade, and right now at the age of 35, soon to be 36, you would typically think that someone of his height would be done, like his career would be done, he'd be a role player. But he's been the leader of a Phoenix Suns team that's fighting for the top spot, not just like a playoff spot, he's fighting for the #1 seed in the loaded Western Conference. They're right behind the Utah Jazz. And should all that be ignored because he doesn't have a ring? No. If your answer is to yes to any of that question, or any of those questions, you are missing out on so much about the game of basketball. And I promise it's way more fun to watch basketball when you appreciate these accomplishments. I don't know how people do this negativity thing. I am a very optimistic person, especially when I'm talking about basketball. When I see a great player do something great, I'm going to appreciate it because these are the best players in the world doing what they're good at. It doesn't make sense to be so negative. I don't know how people get on Twitter and they see something like, for example, Jalen Suggs hits that incredible game-winning shot in the NCAA tournament. And the first thing someone like Skip Bayless does is go on Twitter and tweet out, "Lucky shot." Just give the dude credit for the shot. If it was a lucky shot, then that means Skip Bayless could hit it, and he's not going to hit that shot. It was incredibly athletic and super talented that he was able to hit that shot. I don't understand how people are able to go on Twitter as soon as like a guy like Russell Westbrook is about to break the triple-double record. In like 7 or 8 games, he's going to break that record, and people go on Twitter and they're like, "Oh, it doesn't matter. He doesn't have a ring. He's never won anything. It doesn't matter. He's a fraud, whatever, he's inefficient." Appreciate things. When Anthony Edwards dunked on Yuta Watanabe earlier in the season, there were some people who were like, "Oh, it doesn't matter because he's been super inefficient this game." Watch basketball. Enjoy basketball. Basketball goes very well beyond rings and championships. Even though some people may want you to believe that that's not the case, it does. Basketball is so much more than championships. It's so much more than making it to the finals. There are so many individual performances night in and night out that deserve your attention. So give them your attention and help to kind of break this ring culture thing. Ring culture is toxic. It's a cycle, and it's something that really needs to change. I don't think it ever will. And it sucks because I think it leads to it just kind of hinders the sport as a whole. And it's not fair to these players. It's not fair that people don't properly appreciate their legacies. And if you're one of these people that pushes ring culture, please listen to this video. Please stop. Appreciate greatness. Don't try and slander it. It doesn't make sense. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys later. Everyone say it back.